Mr Mayor, Minister, MP, and distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. And it is great to be back. Thanks very much, Murray. And I can't believe it's not raining. I think it's the only time I've been in Derry and it hasn't rained. Someone just said yet. But it's also great to see old friends and make new friends while I'm here. And it really is an honour for me to be asked to come back today for the opening of Ashleywood House and Mews. What happened was I was in Westminster one day, and Mark Durkan's office called and said, "There's someone we want you to meet." So we come along and I meet Mari Brown and Eleanor McGurkin, and they were able to tell me some of the issues they were dealing with here, some of the problems around domestic abuse and domestic violence. Some of those I was familiar with. They're similar to things that happened in my own constituency, and I'm a patron of Women's Aid in Basildon in Essex. But some of the challenges you face were very specific to Northern Ireland and to Derry, and they were very different. And so I said, as you do, if there's anything I can do to help. You don't say that to Mari unless you mean it. So during the summer, I'm on holiday in Germany, and Mark Durkan tracked me down and said, "Have you seen Mari's email?" And I hadn't because I was on holiday. Anyway, so someone said to me earlier, "Why are you here?" And the answer is because Mari told me to be here today. But I'm delighted to be here, and it's an honour to be involved. There's three things I want to say today. One is, I think, to reflect on the changes that we have seen both in our perception and understanding of domestic abuse, but also how we deal with it. Something about why it's still with us. And also, finally, I'll say something about the future and why I'm optimistic despite all the problems we hear about. But if we reflect on the past, and I've been reading about the history of Foyle Women's Aid and Derry's Women's Aid generally, and reading about the refuge in Pump Street, that sounds exactly like the very first refuge I visited about 30 years ago in Southend-on-Sea. Now just picture the room. There were 3 or 4 bunk beds crammed into every room. There'd be a camp bed or a mattress on the floor, and you'd only go there if you were really, really desperate. And it was packed. It was full, because women and their families were really, really desperate. And they were prepared to leave comfortable homes in many cases they were living in, to be crammed in, 3 or 4 families to one room on bunk beds on the floor because they were desperate. And then when you come in here and you look across the road and see the kind of accommodation that can be provided from women who are fleeing from domestic abuse, you realise how far we've come in that time. Now, I think in terms of funding and finding premises, we know it hasn't been easy, and it's only happened through the sheer will and determinationship and bloody-mindedness of women and men who have wanted to provide shelter for women fleeing abuse. So it hasn't been easy, and I think we see the best of what can be provided today here at Ashleywood House and Mews. But it's not just the physical changes we need to see. We also need those mindset changes. And for most, it's really hard to understand how someone, A, can put up living in that home under abuse, and B, the perpetrators of that abuse. What is in somebody's mind? They want to beat somebody and make them vulnerable. And I thought back to when I was 10 or 11 years old, and a friend of my mum's, who we thought was a bit of a dowdy woman, but wasn't her husband a great laugh? Everyone loved her husband. He was entertaining, he was fun. And one day, she just walked out. She left the kids at first, picked them up very soon afterwards, and was ostracised and criticised. We're talking about sort of the early 1970s, by the people she knew, including some of her own family. And no one understood why she would have walked out. She went to live with another man, and she faced such terrible criticism and abuse for doing so. And it wasn't till a couple of years later that her son, who was now living with her, said to his grandmother, "It's really great. Our new daddy doesn't hit mummy anymore." Now, what kind of society is it where a woman is prepared to take the shame and abuse from walking out on her home rather than tell someone she's been beaten by her husband? What kind of society allows that to happen? So now we're seeing change, and I think we've got to make sure that the shame of being beaten, the fear of being beaten, doesn't stop women seeking the help and support they need, and create spaces where they feel safe. Not just physical spaces, but I think also emotional space that gives women the courage to speak out. Because you mustn't underestimate, I know many of you here won't, but don't underestimate how hard and difficult it is to speak out, how hard that can be. And women who are abused need somewhere to go, someone to listen to them and trust them. And they need to have the authorities on their side and to act for them. And they know that action will be taken to protect their families. So why is it still with us? And why must we never give up? There are 2 women a week are killed across the UK, and you'll know the local figures of how many women every week suffer abuse in their home. 1/3 of teenage girls have experienced some kind of physical or sexual violence in a relationship. 1/3 of teenage girls. So that cycle has to be broken. And we have to understand that domestic abuse isn't about violence or about sex, it's about control. And it's the people who most need to control others are often the most inadequate themselves. And they're relying on that woman feeling shame, shock, and that gradual wearing down of their confidence and personality. And I've spoken to many women who have suffered from domestic violence and abuse in the past. And they look back afterwards, and my friend Fiona was saying to me, it's hard for her to imagine the person she was at that time that this happened to. She's a different person now. Because day after day, week after week, month after month, in her case, year after year, her confidence and her courage in her home were broken down. She still went out to work, but she came home to fear and violence. And that doesn't happen overnight. So for me, the greatest horror of domestic abuse is that it happens at the place that we should feel the most safe, with the people we should feel the most safe. And that's why we have to do so much to tackle it. So what of the future? And this is where my natural optimism in life kicks in. Because those women who look back and didn't recognise themselves anymore, they said, I'm a different person, I'm not that person now. The only reason they were able to do so was because the support and the help and the backing they got from organisations like Women's Aid and about the authorities that supported them. So a refuge has to be a genuine refuge, and they need to be taken seriously by others. And the refuge also has to give that, as I said, the support and the space to gain skills, to gain confidence, so that you move out and then you move on. Now, you can tell I'm a great supporter of Women's Aid, both here and at home in my own constituency. But you know what? It's not all down to Women's Aid, is it? It couldn't be achieved. I know, Mara, you say this about the partnerships and the support that you build up throughout the community. But those of us who are in positions of responsibility, the decision makers, the politicians, the policy makers, councillors, MPs, police, we have a duty and we have obligations. And we have to think, to challenge, and we have to act. And when we're making decisions, what are the impact those decisions have on women's safety? They may be big decisions, like some of the benefit changes that are being made are going to hit women the hardest, and they're hitting Northern Ireland the hardest as well. What effect do they have? Think before we act. And they're small decisions. In my constituency, can you believe they are turning off all the street lights at night in the residential areas? What brain makes someone think that's a good thing to do? So big and small decisions, and funding decisions. When we're looking at funding, where can that funding, even when it's tight, where can it have the most impact, the biggest impact? And sometimes taking those decisions is difficult. But to be honest, I've never found anything I've done that's been worthwhile, that's been easy. And we have to confront those difficult decisions and make those choices. So that's the challenge. And I'm really excited. Here you have stage 1. I've been hearing about your plans for Family Justice Centre, and what a difference that would really make. You know, any woman across the area could walk in through those doors and get the help and support she needs in safety, security, and in absolute confidence that she'll be treated fairly and she'll get the help she needs. And what a credit that would be to Derry, to have that Family Justice Centre based here. I was talking to a friend earlier this week. He's a very old man, he's in his 90s now, and he hasn't got long to live. He's coming towards the end of his life. And he said, I want to reflect and I look back. Because what he wants to look back at and say, have I made a difference? In my 90 plus years, and hopefully he'll make 100, in my 90 plus years here, have I made a difference? And I just think it's the greatest thing you can do. As you move on in life and you look back and you're getting older, did I make a difference? And I think here in Foyle, you, Mari, and your team can really say, I've made a difference. And if you keep on doing that, with Ashleywood Centre, with the Family Justice Centre, you would have made a difference to the lives of so many people, and you will have saved lives as well. And I can think of no better tribute to the work you've done but to look back and say you made a difference. Thank you.